So this year I made a giant leap and did something I'd thought about doing several times in the past. Got myself a leaf vacuum to pull behind the lawn tractor to keep up with this mess when the leaves start falling. Grind them up, get them compacted, and dump them in the woods. In order to use this thing, I've got to do a little prep work, prepare the adapter to go on to the discharge on the mower, and a few other things to get it ready for fall so it holds up to a lot of hard use. And then we'll give it a test once the leaves start falling. So stick around if you want to see how that goes and how it all turns out. Let's get started. Gorgeous Wisconsin fall day, doing some fall prep work. But as I look at these trees, well, I realize it's not going to be long. We're going to have a ton of leaves all along the fence lines and all around the yard to clean up. And every year that's a big job. So today what we're going to do is get this thing ready to use before the leaves all start falling. One of the first things we're going to do, since this is all painted metal except for this plastic top and this discharge chute, is we're going to put a coat of automotive wax on it. Now you're going to say, well, why are you waxing a piece of lawn equipment? Well, one of the things that I've always enjoyed for years is when people say, is that thing new? And I tell them, no, it was new 20 years ago, but I keep it up. And they say, wow, how do you keep this stuff up? Well, instead of replacing stuff and letting it break and wear out, you keep up with it. You keep it maintained, and you start out right out of the gate by doing things that prevent it from getting rusty and make it hard to clean. So we're going to put a coat of wax on this thing. It won't take long, and it'll save a lot of grief down the road. And with that, we have it all waxed and shiny. The tongue, the sides, the bottom, and the inside. It'll make sure the leaves don't stick, especially if they're damp when you're trying to dump them out. So why did I decide on the AgriFab leaf vacuum instead of some of the other brands that are out there? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, AgriFab is readily available near me. Plus, I have used AgriFab equipment for many, many years successfully. That does a good job. If I do need parts for something like this sweeper, I can get them quickly, and they aren't all that expensive. They make a good sturdy cart, a great hand spreader, and with 1.5 acres of lawn, it's nice having this great big AgriFab sprayer and AgriFab pull behind spreader. So I happen to have 2 lawn tractors, and I'm going to set this one up to be connected to that leaf vacuum. We're going to adapt that leaf blower to the discharge on this mower. This mower has a new engine in it that I installed a couple years back, and that was before I did YouTube videos, and that might have made an interesting YouTube video itself. The only real tricky part of putting this leaf vacuum in operation is cutting an opening in this discharge receiver that hooks up to the vacuum hose, getting it cut to fit the discharge on this mower properly. And unfortunately, the only templates that they provide are for a John Deere mower, and well, I don't have a John Deere mower. I've never been a big John Deere fan, so I'm going to have to wing this and figure out how to do it. And so what I did was I took the adapter and I held it up to the discharge and kind of eyeballed where this tip is going straight back, how big the opening would have to be here for that to fit back. And the depth I determined simply by taking the square and holding against that edge out to here where this opening is on the discharge, find out what the distance is back from the front here on this front edge, set my square, took a marker and followed along and drew a line across here. That gave me a rough idea what I would need to cut for an opening. And so I measured that up and I came up with about 16 inches. And I needed something, looking at this, about 4 3/4 inches tall to get over the height here. To get that cut, slid on here, and then mounted with this mounting bracket. So I have those dimensions. I'm going to mark it on this now, and I'm going to cut it out. I may need to cut it out a little more, but we'll start small because you can't put it back on, but you can always take a little more off, and we'll see how this thing fits. I have my dimensions for the discharge opening to cut into this adapter. I took a square and I marked that 16-inch wide, 4 3/4 inch high opening that'll slide over that discharge. And they recommended at least 1/4 inch on the top and at least 1/2 on the side. Well, I got a little more generous. I started out with 3/4 here and 1/2 on the top. And then at the edges, I laid the discharge. I took a pencil and I made a line around, and I'm going to cut out the outside shape of the discharge as well, because something else you have to keep in mind is, will this part down here clear when the mower is in operation, or do I need to move this down further than that 1/2 inch from the top to make everything work out? So let's cut out a template. Let's trim a little bit and get that out of there. Have that out. Another pass at the outline. Didn't quite go through. There's our template. I'm going to take that up and see how it fits. Template in position, and as you can see, with that hole, it covers the entire discharge. But the problem is, even with a 1/2 inch on the top, that's not enough, because the deck is in a raised position right now, and that would be dragging on the ground. So I've got to adjust that up a little bit. Probably I'll get a dimension on that and we'll adjust that up. The hole itself is going to be fine. You can see that it clears the blade. The blade has to be able to spin inside of that discharge adapter and not hit it. And I think we're going to be all right there. Just looking at it around this way. Let's move that up a little bit and see what we end up with. I have the deck in the full up position. And as you can see, I've got quite a bit of clearance on the bottom. Should be in really good shape. So I can let that down a little bit if I have to, but I'm not really trying to mow. I'm trying to get some vacuum here to pull up the leaves, so I probably don't want it down too much. And I do have some latitude yet to play with the cut height with the blade or the deck in the lowered position. I'm going to go with this. I split the difference. It was 1.5 inches. I made it 3/4 on each side. To mark the actual cut lines on this intake unit for the mower discharge, I put some painter's tape on here so I could see a line, and I got a couple reference points with the template. But then, just to make sure I had good straight lines, I used the square here to get a good point for the distance I want up here. And then I proceeded to double check with the tape measure and use the bigger square, so I've got a perfectly square opening to the dimensions I need. And now I need to cut it. I just did a sample cut with my good old trusty Spira cut here that I've had for many years from RotoZip. I don't even know if they make these anymore, but they were quite popular at one time for doing drywall work. And I'll see how that goes. I'll do a little cut and see how straight I can hold it. I really don't want to try the jigsaw on here. That's going to be pretty hard to maneuver across this plastic. I may resort to, once I get a line started, just take a handsaw and cut this. So we'll see how this goes. I haven't used this for a while. Well, if that didn't work, it's too late now. We're going to go over and see how this fits. It fits on the opening and covers it, slides on there. So I will have to now come up with a way to get this thing fastened on here. And I have got different options for that. They sent different kinds of brackets and things. I'm going to have to see now what it's going to take to get this thing bolted on here. What I think I'm going to do, rather than drill more holes in here and try to mount brackets and things and make it difficult to work with the mower and the discharge, I have 2 holes in here for another factory attachment from Simplicity. And I think a carriage bolt would work great in those. I just have to come up with what my space would be. And I think what I'll do is just put a filler across here. Probably just a piece of 1 by something. And screw it from the top to hold it in place. And then I can slide and drill holes through, slide this in, push the carriage bolt up through, and put some washers and a nut on there, and I think we will be secure. So what I've devised for mounting this securely to that discharge on the mower is I have clamped in here a piece of 1 by material. And I'm going to drill down to secure that to this cover with some 1/4-inch slotted head bolts that I'm going to countersink in the wood and put some lock washers and nuts on there. That'll hold that wood in place, and that'll be a reinforcement. I'm going to drill some 9/32 holes for those so they go in easily. I've got them marked so they don't get in the way of the other bolts that I have to put in. And then I am going to drill 2 holes for some 3/8 carriage bolts that'll go into existing holes, slotted holes on that mower deck. That'll come up through with lock washers, and that'll hold this onto the discharge. And that's going to be probably just as good as trying to do it with that metal plate that they provide, because this would require drilling extra holes in the deck and actually sliding this underneath and bolts up through, and I think pretty involved process. So I'm just going to approach it this way, and I think it's going to work. So let's give it a try here. The reason I'm using carriage bolts on the discharge is that with the slot that'll hold it in place. I don't have to get in there with a wrench, and I can tighten this nut on the top, and this smooth surface won't interfere with the discharge from the mower. And I don't have a discharge problem with this piece. It's above the mower deck, but it gives me clearance to get on and off that regular bolts wouldn't provide. So let's get this off of here and counterbore those holes, and then we'll drill the 2 holes that we need for the attachment to the mower deck. So I've got a counterbore here. We'll just do that real quick. That should work. Get this on here the right way. That would help. Let's try this. Get a bolt up through there and see what happens. Once this is bolted in, then it'll be easy to drill those holes for the 3/8 bolts. Yeah, that's good and secure. And I made my marks when I line this up to the deck. Okay, we'll take it over and see if we've done anything right. All right, I'm actually installing this on the backup mower, so to speak. I'm leaving the other mower set up for mowing because I'm going to have to do that at least one more time this fall. I didn't show you the whole process of sliding this on, but it actually went very well. The problem with this and with all the other mounts is that you have no access to get to the bolts underneath, to hold them, to tighten them, to push them through, other than to reach through here. The battery is disconnected on this, so there's no chance of it starting. So the blade won't turn. So it was safe for me to get down here, and it actually went quite well. I pushed the bolts up through the hole in the deck and got them started. And what I'm going to do, they're not quite seated in the slot for the carriage bolt to catch. So I'm going to start to tighten them a little bit, and as they turn, they'll eventually catch, and then I can draw them up tight. So let's see how that goes. See if we can get this thing to catch. First one to catch, get caught. There, I can finger tighten it down to hold it in place. Let's see if we can get the second one to catch here. Seems to be just about there. And it just caught. I can finish snugging these up. I was very glad to see those slotted holes here for that regular simplicity attachment, because they were perfectly sized for a 3/8 carriage bolt, and a 3/8 carriage bolt probably sturdier than I need, but we'll get the job done. Should have brought a deep well, but I don't need to get this thing torqued in too tight. Just take the box end here and snug it up. And remember, I'm pulling into metal on the back side into a nice piece of wood on this side with a good sized flat washer. And I think we are secure. My discharge is completely covered here. I should get a good draw. Pulling the leaves. And now I can release this. This is my patented deflector holder. I decided to take this deflector off, just a couple of 3/8 bolts, hold it into this frame piece. Didn't take long at all. I won't have that flopping here. I think we are all set. This seems really good and sturdy. Can wiggle the whole mower with it. Anxious to give it a try. One quick update before we hook this thing up and use it. I was sitting last night thinking, uh-oh, I didn't cut a semicircle out of the bottom of the adapter, and you need that for the blade to swing by. Now the blade wouldn't have hit the adapter, it would have been just above it, but it wouldn't have had the full contact with the grass and the leaves that it needs to throw it in here. So it was about 2 inches into the adapter itself and then a small semicircle. I traced following the blade pattern and cut that out with a roto-zip, and it's got perfect clearance. So with that in there and all bolted in, we are all set and ready to go. Well, today's a big day. The hose is connected to the adapter on the mower discharge and hooked up to the leaf vacuum. Got the tires pumped up to where they're supposed to be. They were pretty low. Got the mower out. That hadn't been used for a while. Had to top the tires off on that. We are now ready to give it a try, as I certainly have the leaves now to test it with. They're coming down like crazy. Let's fire this thing up and see what it can do. Well, it seems like I've got something caught in the mower deck itself because it's not feeding into the hose, so I've got to check that out. Well, the discharge looks okay. So my next suspicion is that the bin is full. And because the bin is full, it's not pulling anymore from the deck. We lost our vacuum. So we're going to take a look at that next. I have no idea how much I can fit in that thing yet, so this is a learning process. I already have picked up a lot of leaves. So we will go take a look. I've got this backed up a little ways into the woods where I dump all the grass clippings during the summer when I sweep those up. Nice convenient spot to dump these. I'm starting back a ways so I can work my way forward. I don't want to back in here too far. So let's see what we have. Pull those pins, open this up, and pull the back off. Well, it's not completely full. I still had some room up there, but as long as we're here, let's get this thing dumped. Have to disconnect this up front where the leaves go into the unit. Disconnect it from the hopper, and then there's a lever to trip, and we can dump this. And I should have brought a rake along to pull the stuff out of here. I'm going to pull ahead a little bit and see if we can get the rest of this out of here. That worked pretty well. I'm just going to keep pulling ahead, put the back on, and we'll get some more leaves. One thing I found is these, you need a little something to get them started with. Because when the pressure gets on here, those pins get really tight. I should have brought a pliers. Let me try with this. There we go. That one. And this one. One thing though, it gets really heavy against this back plate. You certainly don't want to take these clips off before you get those off, or then you won't get them. And we do this, and we have a full load. Full load of silage. Yay! Oh boy. Yep, I filled her up. I've thought a couple times about putting on a dust mask.
That would be a good idea.
But I get too busy. Alright. It is good dust. Alright, we have to take this off. Now, I saw several review videos on this and other leaf units. Some have different systems than this cover, this elastic banded cover. Well, one review said that these are impossible to get off and on. I haven't found that to be the case. Pretty easy to work with. There's one brand that has a little bit slicker system, but it's not that big a deal. Release the latch. And because I have this all waxed inside, the stuff seems to want to come out of there. So But I've really got her full this time. Get started a little better. Loosen up here. Hung up the cover. There we go. Well, I guess you want to watch it and not get it quite so full. But it's a learning process. I am going to drive ahead, and most of that should just fall out. Shouldn't be as bad this time. So remember, you want to bring a pliers or something, or some kind of tool if you want to pull these pins and then have them fly in the grass where you can't find them. Oh.
Yay!
So I'm going to look into an alternative there. Flip the latch and see what we have. So we got a pretty good load this time too. It's pretty dense over there. And now I know how much I can get in there at a crack. And that will keep me from overfilling back where it lands. This one should come out pretty well. So this is only the first pass. We have other leaves left to fall, obviously. But I did today in a couple of hours. As it interrupted in the middle of the day, we had to go somewhere for a meeting. But in a couple of hours, I did what would normally take me a couple of nights with a blower and rake and tarp and pull into the woods and take down in the woods below. Amazing. And I did this whole yard with what I have so far in, well, I would call it 2.5 loads. 3 not overloaded, so this is nice deal. we've got a little more room for a few more leaves, and there will be more. One thing a new leaf vac doesn't appear to do is keep more leaves from falling. I want to add a couple of detailed comments to the unloading process. If you've got a full load in here where you think you've got a lot of stuff, before you swing these clips out of the way, be sure you pull these pins, because if there's a lot of weight on here and you loosen these, you put even more weight on here. It makes it harder to get these pins out. And I recommend you have a pliers on hand or something that you can pull them out with, because they come out pretty hard, especially if there's a load pressing against them. After you get those pins pulled out, then you can loosen these latches and drop the back off. Goes a lot easier that way. Otherwise, I would say there's really no problem emptying this thing. Works pretty slick. Other thing to note is you'll periodically get a jam in here. It happened to me yesterday. Now maybe after I get a little more used to how fast I can feed the stuff in here or what I'm running through here, it'll not be as bad. But a couple of times I got a pretty heavy load and it got stuck in the hose and I lost my vacuum. And the other time was when I got this too full, but that didn't really have anything to do with the hose. So I suggest that you have available a 5/16 nut driver or a 5/16 socket on a handle or on a small ratchet, because periodically you're going to have to loosen these clamps to pull this off from either the mower deck discharge or from the unit itself. And if you take this off from the unit itself, make sure you've got it turned off, because that's where the impeller is running and you certainly don't want to get your hand in there. That's what's creating all the vacuum. So always use caution there before you take this thing off from the unit itself. Just a note to maybe make it easier for you. So what did I think of this AgriFab leaf vacuum? Well, I thought it did a great job for me. I can't speak for the other ones. There are a lot of them out there. You can look at review videos on them. I have. There's one that's claimed to be the best on the market. I don't know. I can't say that it isn't. But this one certainly did the job for me. The engine ran great right from the start. It ran great. And the only time it jammed up was probably when I tried to feed it a little too fast and got into a little bit of rough stuff. But it was easy to get the jam cleared out. Holds a lot of stuff. I did this entire lawn all over the place. I got a lot of leaves, a lot of trees, and probably about 2.5, maybe 3 good-sized loads that were easy to dump. It saved me just tons of time. I wish I'd have had one of these years ago before I retired, because I would work at night sometimes with the yard lights on to get the leaves cleaned up when they started to fall, to get them picked up sometimes before it snowed or we had a heavy rain. So if you've got a big yard and a lot of leaves, I recommend you look into getting one of these. And if you have an AgriFab available, well, you can consider that, because it seems to work really well. So if you enjoyed this video, please click like and consider subscribing to our channel to see more videos like this. And please comment what other things you'd like to see or things you'd like to see us do differently. We would appreciate that. It helps us improve our channel and helps us grow. So until next time, take care and enjoy your projects.